Okay, got it. So I want to welcome everybody this evening. Resume sharing. Okay. Resume share. Can you see my slide?
Yes,
yes, sir.
Okay,
yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay, you can see why people make bad decisions. So this is what we're going to consider today. And there are different ways we can approach this. People make bad decisions, so we can look at it based on genetics. People make bad decisions because they are inherently bad. So that decision reflects them. You understand? Well, that's one way to look at it, because they are bad people. That's why they make bad decisions. But even bad people, when they make decisions, there are certain things that lead to that, and that's what we want to look at today. Sometimes we can also say people make bad decisions because they don't have all the information that they need. So if you provide them with the information that they need, they will make the right kind of decision. So I don't want to talk about the inherent sinfulness of the average human being or ignorance. I don't want to talk about those two. I want to look at something that I think is fundamental. And every time you make bad decisions, you will find out that this is at the heart of those decisions that you make. So let's go to what is happening every day. From the global examples now, the 1 year ago plus is the Russia-Ukraine example. And just last week is the Hamas and Israel example. Then in the Nigerian balance, we see the removal of fuel subsidy and the floating of the Naira in this new dispensation. Now, if you look at the decisions, you will know that a lot of those decisions were not the right decisions. In Russia, Ukraine, it's a war that could have been averted. Hamas, Israel is a war that could have been averted. The removal of fresh subsidy was not thought through, and now fresh subsidy is bad. The floating of the Naira has been a disaster. Naira now is over 1,000 Naira to $1. In fact, at today, you understand, it's 1,032 Naira. And you wonder, why would any leader make such stupid decision? So if you go to Ukraine, Russia, if you go to Hamas versus Israel, I like to throw it open. So you can use any, let's make this interactive. You can use whether Russia, Ukraine, Hamas, Israel. Why do people make such stupid decision? Now, the case of it was Hamas that attacked Israel, and Israel decided to retaliate. Then Russia, Ukraine. What do you think are the fundamental causes, reasons for some decisions that are obviously wrong? What would you say?
In the case of Russia, Ukraine, I'll probably say pride, their ego.
Okay, ego from which side? From who? Is it from Ukraine or from Russia?
From Russia, actually.
Okay, ego from Russia. Okay, there are no right or wrong answers. There are differences in perspective. Thank you for that perspective. So you believe Russia was proud and Ukraine was humble. Is that what you're saying, sir?
I believe Russia could have just acted bigger, not going to the war. For them, they felt the West was trying to dare them, so they wanted to show their power in going to Ukraine. Yeah.
Okay. So why did Ukraine also go into the war when they know? Why did they take on Russia? Why didn't Ukraine come to a dialogue? You understand, with Russia to say let's come to an agreement.
That is where the Western power. That's where the Western power. I think that's where the Western powers now came in. NATO, to be precise. Ukraine should have just gone for the dialogue, but they were having backing from NATO, which they shouldn't have.
Were they having backing, or they thought they had backing?
Well, they still do. I mean, they're getting aid, they're getting weapons.
Okay. So I think you get where I'm coming from this evening. I think if you look, I agree with pride, but I think what I would say slightly different, you understand differently, is that the pride is in both ways. Ukraine felt that NATO will come to their aid if they take on Russia. So Russia was seen as the villain, you understand, and they felt that NATO will come to their aid and NATO will support them to take on Russia. But when the war started, NATO decided to technically leave Ukraine on your own because, hey, Russia still supplies gas to the whole of Europe, and they still need Russia's gas and oil to power their industries and all that. And so at the end of the day, they left Ukraine to in the open to hang itself and all that. Same thing with Hamas. I think that Hamas must have gone into the battle with Israel on certain assumptions. And this is where I'm coming to this evening, that every time people make fundamentally flawed decisions, if you look at it, you find out that there are two major reasons that happen. The removal of fuel subsidy sounded so exciting. Subsidy is gone, subsidy is done. You didn't think through the consequences of that particular statement. If subsidy is gone, and you did it at that particular time when you floated the Naira, so you devalued Naira, you removed subsidy. We don't produce or refine crude in Nigeria, so we are dependent on the international market. And if you are removing subsidy and you are devaluing Naira, it's just common sense. The prices of petroleum product landing costs will be so expensive. And at a time like this, when people's earning powers are reducing, it's just a very stupid and fundamentally flawed decision. Now, I'm just using that as an example so that you can see that leaders sometimes can make some decisions. Look at Hamas and the lives that have been lost. Look at Ukraine and the businesses and lives that have been destroyed. Eventually, they will come back to that table to say, let's discuss and come to a truth, because there's no war that is fought forever. Whether it's 10 years, whether it's 5 years, eventually people will come back and say, let us discuss. So why didn't they think about that option from the very outset or beginning? So this is a framework I want you to never forget. That every time people make bad decisions, especially decisions that are monumental, so whether decision to travel or decision to go to school, you can make mistake and recover from it. There's some decisions that it will take 10 years for you to recover from it. Every time people make those decisions, at the heart of those decisions is faulty assumptions and not thinking through the consequences. The assumptions for Ukraine and Zelensky is that NATO will come to our aid and it will be us versus Russia, NATO versus Russia, not knowing that this might not pull through. And the assumption also that Russia made is that they will just bulldoze Ukraine in 1 weekend, worst case 1 month. So you find out that the assumptions that they made that led to that war was based on a faulty premise. Every time people make wrong decisions, it's in one of two reasons. The assumptions was faulty assumptions and unintended consequences. I'm sure when Hamas bombed Israel and killed people, they didn't expect the kind of reaction that Israel would bring forth. Now they are trying to call for a truce. They didn't expect the kind of reaction. They didn't think through the unintended. What will happen if this decision doesn't go the way I planned it? What is the first level consequence, level number 2 consequence, and do I have the stamina to face those consequences or deal with those consequences? These are the two major reasons people make faulty decisions, whether from an organizational perspective, a company wants to expand to new businesses. What are the underlying assumptions? And that assumptions can come from your belief system, from your experiences, from your attitude, it can come from different things, but you make an assumption. And see what an assumption is something that you don't have a fact, it's an opinion of what you think about something, and you hope that it is true. And sometimes the problem is that we not take our assumptions as truth. So we just feel that, don't worry, this business will succeed. This business will succeed. And you plunge in only for you to find out that was a major disaster mistake that you made. And if you think through all this, how do 419ers get people to part out money? It's the same underlying assumptions. If you bring $1,000, we'll give you $5,000, and you get so excited, you get carried away. You don't ask yourself, what if this doesn't work? And you've plunged $50,000, you've plunged $100,000, and you now find out that you have been scammed. You didn't think through the unintended consequences, and your assumptions were faulty. What has to be true for this decision to be right? That's a question you need to ask yourself. On what basis On what basis am I making this decision? What are my assumptions concerning this? So if you want NATO to have your backing, you want the backing of NATO, do you have something that you have signed down with NATO, an agreement, not just verbal promise, something signed, recorded, and the rest, that you know, okay, you have something that you can hold on to. And if you check through life, look at different areas. If you even think about Judas, why did Judas betray Jesus? If you look at it, there were some assumptions. Judas was stealing money and he felt he would not be caught. And I think that some Bible scholars felt that when he sold Jesus, you understand, sold Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, he thought that Jesus would escape. He thought that Jesus would disappear. He thought that Jesus, many times they've tried to kill Jesus, and scripture says that Jesus will walk through them and escape and live. And in his mind, that assumption is that I will make 30 pieces of silver and Jesus would escape. But in that particular case, it didn't work, because after Jesus was held and he betrayed Jesus, the Bible makes us understand he brought the 30 pieces of silver and says, I have betrayed innocent blood. So it means that he didn't think in his mind that Jesus was going to be crucified. He thought that, no, this is an opportunity for us to make quick money. That's why he returned the money back with guilt. So the assumptions that he made in the betrayal of Jesus was also wrong. I don't know. Am I communicating?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The assumption in that decision was wrong. And he didn't think of the consequences. Consequence one was where he lost his apostleship among the 12. Consequence two was that he died. Consequence three is that he's in hell, because Judas is called the son of perdition. And if you look at scripture, it's only Judas and the Antichrist that is called the son of perdition. So it's in the class, in the place, the same punishment with the Antichrist. So if you think about it, he lost his ministry, lost his life, and will spend an eternity in hell forever. He didn't think through the unintended consequences. And this is it. And if you look at it, when a man sees one way, let's take for everybody here is in Nigeria, when the man sees one way and decides to enter the one way, or you see if you're driving on Ikodu or the BRT lane and somebody decides to enter the BRT lane, why is that person entering the BRT lane? Certain assumption. The assumption is there, I can't see any last mile official here, they will not catch me, it will make my journey will be faster. That's the assumption. But he's not thinking about unintended consequences. What if they catch me? What if my face is splashed on the dailies? What if my vehicle is impounded? He's not thinking. And notice what happens here. See the relationship. When the assumption is faulty, you will not think of unintended consequences. Because if you think they will not catch you, that's the assumption. If you think you're a sharp person, that is the assumption. You will not think of what if they catch me, the unintended consequences. And you could give different business decisions, people that have made business decisions. I don't want to mention some names, but many years ago, a company decided to take a plunge and went into the IT space and bought a license from Nigerian Communication Commission for $100 million. As soon as I heard the story, I just said to myself, this guy has made a major mistake. You want to play in the place where you are like a tilapia. You want to play in the place with the shark, the MTN, the Airtels of this world. You are buying a license to roll out data across the nation. Do you have the money for the infrastructural development to enable the rollout? And today, that decision has almost destroyed that company. Underlining assumptions, unintended consequences. Every time you're making a decision, you just understand that a decision sits on assumption. And scripture says, if the foundation be faulty, in this case, the foundation of decision is the assumptions that we are making. There has to be an assumption. When you want to lend somebody money, you're making an assumption that the person will pay back. What if the person doesn't pay back? That you've made an assumption. and that assumption can either be faulty or can be right. You've made an assumption. If it works well, that means your assumption is right. If it doesn't work well, it means that your assumption is wrong. But certain times you just know that this is a wrong assumption. This is a wrong assumption. And I don't know if I'm communicating, guys.
Yes, sir, you are.
Yes, sir, you're communicating, sir.
So two things I tell people here in making the right decision is, number one, think about what are the assumptions. You understand? What are the assumptions? Now, so take, for example, what is happening right now is that everybody wants to Japan, and I have no problem. Please, if God opens a door for you, please, by all means, take that opportunity and go for it. If God opens a door, I will encourage you, please do that. But you also need to sit down and say, what are the assumptions? What assumptions are you making? If I just get there, doors will just open to me of their own accord. Yes, it's amazing, but you also need to be realistic that you are going there at a time when you are in your 40s and the rest. You might be you have to tell yourself that, see, I'm willing to do anything legitimately, even if it is cleaning floor, so to speak, in order for me to survive. But if you just think that you just get there and the things will just begin to happen, that assumption might be wrong. And when you get there and it doesn't happen the way you expect, that's why you see some people online saying that they're almost in depression, things are not easy, they didn't know that this was how it was going to be, and the rest. The assumptions that they made, the pictures that were painted were not completely true. And people have sold their houses and the rest to try and do that and relocate. And for some it has worked, for some it has not worked very well. Assumptions and unintended consequences are the reason why people make bad decisions. So let me go through in the next 10 minutes how we normally make decisions. So why do we make 40 assumptions? That's where I want to talk about. Or why don't we think through the unintended consequences? I want to take you through an overview from the book Thinking Fast and Slow. That's an overview that I'll talk about here. In that book, Thinking Fast and Slow, what the man said is that the brain has two systems. He has the easy part and the one that has to do with effort. The easy part, and I'll talk about it as I move it. So what the man called it here is the spontaneous and the slow. The author of that book, Thinking Fast and Slow, is Daniel Kahneman. He won a Nobel Prize through the concept that he brought in that particular book. And he says that there are two systems of the brain in terms of decision making. There's the spontaneous system. Spontaneous is what the word is fast. It happens with speed, lightning speed. And there's the slow system that takes time for it to process information. Now, what he now said in the book is that the spontaneous system by nature, it doesn't require effort, little or no effort. And see, the problem here is that the spontaneous system is always on. The only time the spontaneous system might not be on is when you are sleeping, so to speak, in decision making. But even at that, it's still working at the background. But from the moment you wake up, every moment, it's always on. You see a car, you say, I like this car. You see somebody say, I don't like this person. The spontaneous system, every moment of the day, the spontaneous system is on. Then, and what it does what is called associated memory or associative memory. Is that I've seen this before. And so it's about familiarity. How familiar am I with this particular thing? I've seen this before. I've seen this kind of example before. And based on that, the spontaneous system takes a decision. So there are certain people, maybe you just hear their name, just by the virtue of their name, you tell yourself, you make a decision whether you like the person or you don't like the person, by virtue of where they're from, by virtue of their belief system. The spontaneous system quickly jumps to conclusion. So when you say somebody is jumping to conclusion, that is happening from the spontaneous system. And it is good for something that are very simple, something that is instinctive, or something that is routine or routinized. So if I want to drive my car, because I've driven over and over, I don't need to think twice about it. I just take my key, I put the key in the ignition, and I drive out. It's the spontaneous system. And on the road, I navigate. So as I'm driving, I can be listening to music, listening to a gospel message, and I'm still driving. It's the spontaneous system. It has a way of routinizing a lot of the things that happens in our life. So the goal of the spontaneous system is to make things automatic and fast. So if you see the picture I have here, you can tell, for example, that this man is angry. You understand? We don't know what has caused the anger, but we can all agree. That this guy is so angry and he's really pointing his finger at somebody and you can predict some of the words that can come out from his mouth. How are you able to arrive at this decision? Is the spontaneous system that knows that this is how angry people look like. That's one. But there's the second part, which is the slow system. And so if I ask you what is 18 times 37, 18 times 17, you have to think slowly. You need to not do calculation, mathematical calculation. What is 8 times 7? What is 7 times 1? And do the addition in your head before you arrive. So such decisions that are complex, it is this spontaneous system cannot give you the answer. Anything you say, if you use the spontaneous for complex decision, what you'll be doing is guesswork. Now you need to put the slow system, and the slow system is deliberate. The slow system is effortful. It requires concentration. But here is the problem. The slow system is only partially on. Now, see the difference. The spontaneous movement system that normally brings decisions fast, quick, sudden, is always on. And the slow system is not always on. It's only partially on. It's like a switch. You need to switch it on. So what happens to a lot of people is that the slow system is off, and it's the spontaneous system that is controlling a lot of the decisions that they're making. So if you ask them something, the first thing, they'll just spot an answer without thinking it through. So when you say somebody did not think it through, it means that the slow system was not actively engaged, that he just used the spontaneous system, made certain assumptions, took the assumptions as fact, and decided to run with the assumption without thinking through that. So the slow system requires effort, requires concentration. Here is the challenge. Challenge here is that a lot of people, just by nature, the way the slow system is, it gets tired easily. So if I ask somebody 18 times 17, 17 times 35, and the rest, after a while, the slow system shuts down. So it requires somebody to say, hey, I need to focus my energy and attention to arrive at the answer. So when people face complex problems, instead of activating the slow system and keeping it engaged to arrive at an answer, they get tired easily and they fall back to the spontaneous system and just choose the answer that is necessary. I don't know if I'm communicating.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, you are, sir. Yes, you are, sir. Right on, sir.
So you can see that when you face tough decisions, you need the slow system to kick in. But that slow system requires effort, requires strategy, requires discipline, requires dedication, requires you saying the next 2 hours I need to focus my energy, mental energy. But a lot of people do not want to pay that price. So they default back to the spontaneous system and just give the answer and move on. So that's what you see, that the slow system is lazy, cannot hold that energy. The people who achieve greatness are the people who have learned to discipline their slow system and pay that price mentally in their energy to focus their attention. So let me put it this. Why is it difficult to read your books but easy to watch television for 4 hours? Hello?
Allah.
And the answer is that reading your books requires the slow system to be involved. Watching television doesn't require the slow system. It's something that is easy, it's routine, it's simplified. You can just sit there. You're not mentally engaging your mind, you're just having fun. So you can watch television for 10 hours and not even feel tired. You understand? But to now focus your energy 2 hours to read your book, you require the slow system. And that's why for a lot of people, it is difficult. By 30 minutes, they've gotten tired, but they can stay with television for another 2 hours, another 4 hours, another 8 hours. It's the same reason in decision making. If you don't understand these two systems, you will not understand why a lot of people make certain decisions. The spontaneous system is where our decisions come from. So see what happens when a problem arises, or when you meet a situation, you meet somebody, an offer is before you. The first system that gives you an idea is the spontaneous system. Wow, I like this idea. The proposal looks so nice. It's the spontaneous system. It generates impression in how do I feel about it? Judgment, you make judgment, and it passes that judgment to the slow system. if the slow system doesn't challenge it. So you meet somebody for the first time, I say, I like this person, or I don't like this person. You don't have any evidence to say why you like the person or you don't like the person. But sometimes we run with that decision, and you just find out that you say, this person, I don't know. Is the spontaneous system that has generated an idea for you that the slow system has endorsed, accepted and endorsed as a belief, and it becomes a particular decision. This is what happens to people 95% of the time. And this particular process can work 95% of the time, but sometimes 5%, it can destroy somebody's life, somebody's future, somebody's finances, because the spontaneous system gets excited. It's very excitable. It gets excited, runs with the decision. And this is where you say, did you not think it through? What you're indirectly saying is that the slow system was not engaged. The spontaneous system was the one that ran with speed about that particular decision. And this is for a lot of us here. As I look at my life and look backwards, I saw some of the decisions that I've made that were a mistake. I found out that we were carried away with excitement, and we didn't do the due diligence. That's the slow system. We didn't do that slow, take pause, think about it. You're too much in a hurry. Pause, think about it, ask certain questions. Is the slow system that does that. For a lot of people, there's a circumvention of that system. It just moves from spontaneous to decision, and they find out that, oh, it was a major mistake that they made. So how does this work so that I can bring this to a close? It's 9:38. What I'm saying here today is that people make bad, there are so many reasons why we make bad decisions. We can talk about they're inherently bad. That's why they made bad decisions. But even that inherently bad is a function of the assumptions that they make, because a bad man would make that, the assumptions would definitely be negative. That's inherently bad. The ignorance part, information, but sometimes you can provide information to people and yet they will not make the right decision, because there's a process that happens. The spontaneous system and the slow system, the default methodology of the average human being is the spontaneous system, and the spontaneous system wants something that is easy. And so how does the spontaneous system work? Is that the question the spontaneous system would ask is that, does it feel familiar? Does it feel true? Does it feel good? Does it feel effortless? So notice this, that the spontaneous system works with feelings. How I feel about this, how I feel. So it makes sense. It feels good. It feels effortless. Don't worry. The spontaneous system is that feeling, that excitable, very excitable. So once somebody can paint that picture and say, don't you know that Maxwell has also signed up? Oh, okay, because you know Maxwell, and Maxwell has signed up. If Maxwell was signed up, let me sign up. Now they've used somebody that is familiar. They've anchored your decision on something that is familiar, and you take the decision based on that familiar, somebody that you know that is familiar. It's the same thing when they say, doctor, dentists have endorsed this. They are using dentists to make it look familiar to you so that you can take a decision. When they use celebrities to endorse a product, is this feeling familiar, looking good, feels true, that they are using? And the other part also is about repeated experience. A primed idea is that sometimes they can put a word in your mind, and that word begins to govern every other thing that you do. So they can talk about food, for example. And once they use the word food, your mind is primed with food. You pay more attention to the things that are related to food, or to the things that are related to rest, or to the things that are related to exercise. They've primed your mind. So advertisement is a way of priming our mind. We see the first time, we ignore, we see the second time. After a while, we begin to say, let me even try this. You've been primed. You begin to pursue that particular thing because your mind has been primed. And finally, also is the mood. Once I can make you feel good, I can force you to make a decision. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yes, you are,
sure,
sir. Yes, you are.
Sure.
This is what happens to a lot of us unconsciously. And for great manipulators, this is how they manipulate people. They make you feel important, they make you feel good, they make you feel special, they make you feel that you're the best thing that happened to them. And once you do that, you lower your guard and you make certain decisions without thinking through. Now, once you make that decision, your mind is not thinking again because the spontaneous system has hijacked it and made the decision for you. This system works 90% of the time, but sometimes it can go wrong because there are biases. It can go wrong because it doesn't challenge the assumptions that the spontaneous system brings. It can go wrong because it doesn't think through unintended consequences. So once we cede control to the spontaneous system, it can actually become a tragic decision that anybody can make. And this is where I want to stop today because of my time. Tomorrow or next week, I'll talk about the process of how information comes, how our biases are affected, how we need to apply critical thinking in order to make a better decision. I hope this session was helpful. I hope it wasn't too complex.
No, sir.
No, it's us.
Oh, so simple.
Okay, so next week we'll continue from this, you understand? So I think the lesson I want to say to you here is the first the first answer that comes to mind, don't just jump at it. It's likely coming from the spontaneous system. You need to challenge it. You need to slow down. You need to engage the slow system and do critical thinking. And that's what we'll enter tomorrow and talk about the concept of critical thinking, applying it to decision making, talk about the two types, the rational and the intuitive decision making again as we conclude the stage. Father, we thank you for grace. We bless your name. We honor you. We thank you for your word this evening. We thank you for the inspiration that you've given to us. You help us by your spirit to make better decisions in Jesus' precious